Colorado Territory, 1881. The sound of hammering stopped when she rode into town. Clara Whitman pulled her horse to a halt outside the blacksmith shop, dust swirling around her worn boots as she dismounted. The man at the forge looked up, sweat glistening on his bare chest, dark hair falling across his eyes. "Need something fixed?" he asked, setting down his hammer. Clara hesitated, glancing at the two small faces peering out from behind her saddle. "My wagon wheel, cracked clean through about 5 miles back." The blacksmith wiped his hands on a leather apron and stepped closer. That's when he saw them, 2 children, maybe 6 and 8 years old, clinging to each other with the wide-eyed look of those who'd seen too much. "I'm Marcus Kane," he said gently. "And you are?" "Clara Whitman. These are my children, Lucy and Ben." Marcus nodded to the children, who shrank further behind their mother. "Well, Clara Whitman, let's take a look at that wheel." He followed her to where she'd left the wagon at the edge of town. The wheel was worse than cracked. It was split nearly in half, held together by little more than the iron rim. "You're lucky it held this long," Marcus said, running his fingers along the brake. "Another mile, and you'd have been walking." Clara's shoulders sagged. "How much to fix it?" Marcus studied her face, the hollow cheeks, the threadbare dress, the way she held herself like someone expecting the worst. "Depends. You got money?" "Some." Her voice was barely a whisper. "How much is some?" Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. Marcus counted them with his eyes. "Maybe $3. Not nearly enough for a new wheel." "Tell you what," he said. "I'll fix your wheel. You can pay me back when you're settled wherever you're headed." "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity. It's a loan." Marcus crouched down to the children's level. "You two hungry?" Lucy, the younger one, nodded before Clara could stop her. "My sister runs the boarding house, makes the best stew in 3 counties. Why don't you all get some food while I work on this wheel?" Clara shook her head. "We can't afford. Already told you, it's a loan, all of it." Marcus stood, his eyes meeting hers. "When's the last time these children had a proper meal?" Clara's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. The children's thin faces told the story. "Sarah's place is the blue house with white shutters. Tell her Marcus sent you." An hour later, Marcus found them at his sister's table, the children eating like they hadn't seen food in days. Clara picked at her bowl, watching her children with fierce protectiveness. "They're good kids," Sarah said quietly, joining Marcus by the kitchen door. "Polite, grateful, but scared." "Of what?" "Or who?" Sarah corrected. "The woman keeps looking over her shoulder like she's expecting someone to walk through that door." Marcus watched Clara smooth Lucy's hair with gentle fingers. "She's running." "That's what I figure. Question is, from what?" That evening, Marcus finished the wheel as the sun set behind the mountains. He found Clara and the children sitting on Sarah's porch, Lucy asleep in her mother's lap, Ben leaning against her side. "All done," Marcus said softly, not wanting to wake the little girl. Clara looked up. "Thank you. We'll be on our way in the morning." "Where are you headed?" "West. California, maybe." Marcus sat on the porch steps. "Long way to California. Dangerous too, especially with children." "We'll manage." "I'm sure you will, but you don't have to." He turned to face her. "This town could use a school teacher. Sarah mentioned you taught the children their letters." Clara's eyes widened. "I'm not a teacher. I read to them. More than most folks around here can do. The last teacher left 6 months ago. Children are growing up wild." "You don't understand. We can't stay anywhere long." "Why not?" Clara was quiet for so long, Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "My husband. He's looking for us." "Ex-husband?" "No, still married in the eyes of the law." Her arms tightened around Lucy. "He's a violent man, Mr. Kane. When he drinks, which is most days, She trailed off, but Marcus could see the faded bruises on her wrists. "And the children?" Clara's face hardened. "He never touched them, but they saw. They heard." Lucy stopped talking for 3 months after the last time. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, hot as his forge. "Where is he now?" "Denver, last I heard. But he has friends, men who owe him favors. He'll find us eventually. Not if you don't want to be found." Clara looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "This is a small town, but it's got good people. We look after our own." Marcus leaned forward. "Stay, Clara. Teach the children. Let your kids have a real home. And when he comes?" Then we'll deal with him." Clara shook her head. "You don't know him. Thomas Whitman doesn't give up. He'd rather see us dead than free." Then maybe it's time someone stood up to Thomas Whitman. The next morning, Clara was loading her children into the repaired wagon when Marcus approached with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said last night. Mr. Kane, I appreciate everything you've done, but hear me out." He handed her the coffee. "You're right. Running won't solve anything. He'll keep chasing you, and you'll keep running, and those children will never have a real home." Clara sipped the coffee, waiting. "But what if Clara Whitman disappeared?" she frowned. "I don't understand. What if she died in a wagon accident? Terrible tragedy. Bodies never recovered, swept away by the river." Clara's eyes widened. "You're talking about faking our deaths. I'm talking about giving you a new life, new names, new history. As far as anyone knows, Clara Whitman and her children died crossing the Arkansas River." "And then what?" Marcus smiled. "Then Clara, let's say Clara Mitchell, widow from Kansas, comes to town looking for work as a school teacher. Brings her children, Lucy and Ben Mitchell." Clara stared at him. "Why would you do this for us?" "Because everyone deserves a chance to start over, and because this town needs you." "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you'd walk through fire for those children. I know you're brave enough to leave everything behind to protect them. I know you're kind and smart and stronger than you think." Clara looked at her children, then back at Marcus. "If we did this, if we stayed, what would people think? A widow and a bachelor. They'd think I was lucky to have such a fine woman teaching their children. And if, in time, that widow decided she could trust again." Marcus let the sentence hang. "You're talking about marriage. I'm talking about partnership, protection, a real family for those children." He stepped closer. "I'm talking about love, if you'll let it grow." Clara was quiet for a long moment, then Lucy tugged on her skirt. "Mama, can we stay? I like it here, and Mr. Marcus makes pretty things." Clara looked down at her daughter, then at Ben, who was nodding eagerly. Finally, she looked at Marcus. "What would we need to do?" The plan was simple, but required careful timing. Marcus had friends, men who'd fought in the war, who understood the need for new identities. Within a week, they'd created a convincing accident scene by the river, complete with wagon debris and torn clothing. Meanwhile, Clara and the children stayed hidden at Marcus's cabin outside town. He brought them supplies and news, and slowly, Clara began to relax. The children played in the meadow behind the cabin, their laughter growing stronger each day. "You're different here," Marcus observed one evening, watching Clara read to the children by lamplight. "How so?" "You smile. Really smile. Not just for their sake." Clara closed the book and looked at him. "I'd forgotten what it felt like to not be afraid. And now? Now I'm terrified," she admitted, "but for different reasons. Such as letting myself hope this could work. Such as trusting someone again." She paused. "Such as falling in love with a man who's risking everything for strangers." Marcus moved closer. "We're not strangers anymore." "No," Clara whispered, "we're not." He cupped her face gently, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I won't hurt you, Clara, I swear it." "I know." She leaned into his touch. "That's what scares me most." When he kissed her, it was soft and careful, full of promise rather than demand. When they broke apart, Clara rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. All of you." 2 weeks later, Clara Mitchell arrived in town with her children, seeking work as a schoolteacher. The townspeople welcomed her warmly, especially when they learned she'd been widowed young and was raising her children alone. Marcus courted her properly, bringing flowers and taking her for walks while the children played. To everyone watching, it was a sweet romance between two lonely souls who'd found each other. The truth was more complicated and more beautiful. They were building something real from the ashes of Clara's old life, creating a family bound not just by love, but by shared courage and hope. The wedding was small but joyful. Clara wore a simple blue dress that Sarah had sewn, and Marcus wore his best suit. Lucy scattered wildflower petals while Ben carried the rings with solemn importance. When the preacher asked if they would love and cherish each other, their voices rang clear and true. They'd already proven they would. The schoolhouse became the heart of the community. Clara taught reading and writing, arithmetic, and history. She organized spelling bees and Christmas pageants. The children adored her, and their parents respected her quiet strength. Marcus's blacksmith shop prospered. He made horseshoes and wagon parts, but also delicate jewelry and toys for the children. Lucy treasured the iron rose he'd made for her, and Ben wore the small hammer Marcus had crafted like a badge of honor. They built a house together, not large but filled with warmth and laughter. Clara planted a garden while Marcus built furniture. The children grew taller and stronger, their fears fading like old scars. One evening in their second year, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Clara noticed a rider approaching town. Her blood ran cold. "Marcus," she said quietly. He followed her gaze and saw what she saw, a man in expensive clothes riding a fine horse, asking questions at the saloon. "Take the children inside," Marcus said calmly. "Pack a bag, just in case." But Clara didn't move. "I'm tired of running." "Clara, no." She stood, her jaw set with determination. "I'm Clara Kane now. This is my home, my family, my life. I won't run anymore." The man, Thomas Whitman, found them the next morning. He rode up to the schoolhouse where Clara was teaching, dismounted, and walked inside like he owned the place. "Hello, wife," he said, his voice carrying the old menace. The children in the classroom went silent. Clara stood slowly, placing herself between Thomas and her students. "You're mistaken," she said clearly. "My name is Clara Kane. I don't know you." Thomas laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Playing games, are we? I've been looking for you for 2 years, Clara. Did you really think you could hide from me?" "I said you're mistaken. Please leave my classroom." "Our children look well," Thomas continued, ignoring her words, "though I see they've forgotten their real father." Lucy and Ben, sitting in the front row, shrank back in their seats. Clara's protective instincts flared. "These children don't know you," she said firmly, "and you're frightening them. Leave, now." Thomas stepped closer, and Clara saw the familiar signs, the red-rimmed eyes, the smell of whiskey, the barely controlled violence. "You're coming with me, Clara. You and the children. We're going home." "This is my home." Thomas's hand moved to his gun. "I said you're coming with me." That's when Marcus appeared in the doorway, his own hand resting casually on his holster. "Problem here?" he asked mildly. Thomas turned, sizing up the blacksmith. "This is between me and my wife." "Funny thing about that," Marcus said, stepping into the room. "Clara Kane is my wife, has been for over a year now. Got the papers to prove it." "That's impossible. She's already married." "To a dead man, maybe. Thomas Whitman died in a wagon accident 2 years ago. Tragic story. Bodies never recovered." Thomas's face darkened. "You think you're clever?" "I think I'm a man protecting his family." "She's not your family. Those children aren't your children." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Blood doesn't make a family, friend. Love does. Choice does. Being there when it matters does." "I'll kill you first." "You can try." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Clara could see Thomas calculating, weighing his options. He was a bully, used to intimidating women and children, but Marcus was a different proposition entirely. "This isn't over," Thomas said finally. "Yes, it is," Clara said, finding her voice. "Thomas Whitman is dead. He died the day I stopped being afraid of him." Thomas stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out. They heard his horse gallop away, but Marcus didn't relax. "He'll be back," Clara said quietly. "Maybe, but not alone next time." Marcus was right. Thomas returned that evening with 3 men, all armed, all looking for trouble. But they found more than they bargained for. The entire town had turned out. Shopkeepers and farmers, the doctor and the preacher, even the women with their children safely behind them. They stood in the street, a wall of determined faces. "This is our teacher," called out Jim Henderson, the store owner. "Our neighbor, our friend." "Any man who threatens her threatens all of us," added Doc Patterson. Thomas looked around at the crowd, his confidence wavering. "This is a private matter." "Nothing private about threatening a woman and children in our town," said Sarah Kane, stepping forward with a shotgun in her hands. Marcus moved to stand beside Clara, Lucy and Ben flanking them. A family, a real family, backed by a community that had claimed them as their own. "You have no power here," Clara said, her voice carrying across the silent street. "No authority, no claim. I am not your wife. These are not your children. We are not your property." Thomas's hand moved toward his gun, but stopped when he heard the distinctive sound of multiple hammers being cocked. Every man in the crowd was armed and ready. "I'd think real careful about your next move," Marcus said quietly. Thomas looked around one more time, seeing the determination in every face. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. "This isn't over," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Yes," Clara said firmly. "It is." Thomas and his men rode out of town that night and never returned. Word came later that he'd been killed in a saloon fight in Denver, drunk and belligerent to the end. Clara felt no joy at the news, only relief. The last shadow from her old life was gone. The years that followed were filled with the quiet happiness of a life well lived. Clara continued teaching, watching children grow and learn. Marcus's business thrived, and he became the town's unofficial leader, the man people turned to when problems needed solving. Lucy grew into a confident young woman who wanted to be a teacher like her mother. Ben developed his father's skill with metal and fire, spending every free moment at the forge. When Lucy was 18, she married the doctor's son in a ceremony that filled the church to overflowing. When Ben turned 21, he opened his own smithy in the next town over, carrying on the family tradition. Clara and Marcus found themselves alone again, but it was the comfortable solitude of two people who'd built something lasting together. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked one evening, echoing a question he'd posed years earlier. Clara, now silver-haired but still beautiful, smiled at him across their dinner table. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner." "We found each other when we needed to," he said, taking her hand. "That's what matters." That night, as they had every night for 15 years, they sat on their porch watching the stars come out over the mountains. The town around them was quiet and peaceful, filled with families they'd helped raise and protect. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Clara asked. "All those years ago, when we decided to disappear?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "Look around you. Look at what we built. Look at the children we raised, the lives we touched, the love we found." Clara nodded, understanding. Sometimes the best way to find yourself is to lose who you used to be. "And sometimes," Marcus said, bringing her hand to his lips, "the best way to save a life is to give it a new beginning." In the distance, they could see lights in the windows of the houses they'd helped build, the families they'd helped create. Tomorrow, Clara would teach another generation of children. Marcus would forge another horseshoe, another tool, another small piece of the life they'd built together. The woman who'd ridden into town 20 years ago, desperate and afraid, was gone. In her place was Clara Kane, teacher, mother, wife, pillar of the community. A woman who'd learned that sometimes running away was really running toward something better. Some stories end with rescue, others end with redemption. The best ones end with both, and the quiet knowledge that love, once found, can transform not just two hearts, but an entire world. The blacksmith and the teacher had found their forever, forged in fire and tempered by time, strong enough to last a lifetime and beyond.